Hello everybody, it's Lisa, back from spring break, and here to review with you week 6 materials and activities. So let's go ahead and jump into Blackboard, or actually eCampus. Behind the scenes, it's Blackboard. And let's go ahead into the assignments and lectures. And let's review real quick the listing here for week 6. So week 6 is going to be the very last week that you'll be working with lynda.com tutorials. So if you haven't got caught up on any of those during spring break, you need to get caught up this week because we'll be moving forward on your term project and spending a lot of time on that for the future. Next week we do have a tutorial set for CSS, but it's not in lynda.com. So you do have one more technology lesson, but it won't be involved with watching any tutorials in lynda.com. It'll be more involved with hands-on with CSS. So that's what's up for next week. But for this week, we also are going to submit a project progress report, and in that report you're going to include some website planning and some website diagrams to hopefully start moving forward with getting your head around how you're going to begin to design this famous person website. So let's go ahead and jump into the folder here and go through the materials. So let's talk about your progress report first. The progress report is going to involve revising your progress report from last week based on any research or any new information you have obtained for this week. So perhaps during the process of developing your site diagram, you may have made some changes or decided on something different, or wanted to add more information about research to your progress report from last week. I highly recommend you include that new information in your progress report for this week, week 6. The other component that's part of the progress report this week will be the site diagram. And I have added some things as of this morning to this progress report write-up because I had a lot of questions yesterday and this week as I was going through grading on how to set up your file structure and how to get yourself sort of organized in terms of files, folders, and getting things working in Dreamweaver. So I've included a few more things here and I'm going to review those with you today. First of all, I'd like to make sure that you're aware that I've got 2 handouts in here in week 6 that you need to take a look at. The first one is the web organization handout, and I have that open here. And that's this handout here, and this basically goes over how to set up your local desktop or your computer desktop, and then how that local file structure will look once you create a site in Dreamweaver. So I have that information here at the top of the handout. I've also talked about some do's and don'ts of working with HTML pages and such, and working with assets. And now, right off the bat, we're not going to be doing any of this week, but eventually you will be creating HTML pages. You'll be making GIF and JPEG files out of Photoshop. You're going to have a chance to reference back to this information, but it's here for you to look at now if you so choose. As well as down here is a long list of all the page and linking criteria that I will expect of you eventually when you turn this project in. So I just wanted you to know up front what the expectations were for each page, how many images you should have on each page, what are the things I'll be looking for on each page and such. So that's what this handout is about. I've also chosen to write another handout this week to elaborate a little more on this information, and that handout back here in eCampus is called Diagram and File Structure Handout, and that one looks like this. So this is an example of what I'm looking for this week. At the top is a website diagram, and this is just a real quick diagram that I put together to kind of give you an idea visually of what I'm looking for this week. So you need to sit down with your website on this famous person and start getting organized about the different areas of the website, how elaborate those areas may be in terms of what links you may have off those individual pages and such, and starting to map out how you see this website coming together. And you may begin like I have here in this example. So at the top here, I start out with this red folder here. Now just imagine this as a folder, even though it doesn't have a little tab. This is your root folder, and I made it red because it is the most important folder that you can make in first beginning to set up the proper structure for a website. From the root folder, everything else will sort of list downward. Okay, so the root folder is the top level of your website. As you can kind of see here, it's at the top and it's in red. What I'd like you to do, and you can do this before you even get started with building the HTML pages and creating the content, is to actually create a folder on your desktop or in a project folder somewhere and name it the famous person's name. Okay? So you'll create that first root folder and you'll give it the name of that famous person, whoever it is that you're working on. Okay? Now inside that folder, you're going to have one other folder and only one other folder. Now, if you were working on a large website for a large company like AT&T or whatever, you may have multiple folders under your root folder. But for the purposes of this assignment and this project, since this is a very small project, 5 to 10 page website, there's really no need to have any more than one other folder inside this root folder, and that folder needs to be named images, and that is listed here. And if I zoom up on this just slightly here, you'll see it says this is where you will save your image assets created in Photoshop. These assets will be used in your pages below. So when we get to the Photoshop creation portion of this class, which will be in a couple of weeks, you'll be creating JPEGs, GIFs, and PNG files that will eventually be placed into your website. You will store all those files inside the images folder here. So far you've created one folder called root with the famous person's name, and inside that root folder is a folder called images. Okay, so you only have two folders. If you want to look at it in terms of how it should look on your desktop, you've got a folder here, and inside there is a image folder. Okay? All right, so now you should be thinking about how are you going to break down the information related to your famous person. Now, in this example, I've chosen to break down my information in this fashion. Now, you have some required pages that you need to have in your site, such as citations. I believe you do have to have a contact page, and I think those are the only two specific ones that you have to have. Oh, and you have to have a home page, of course. But the rest of the pages of your site are basically based on your famous person and how you're going to break down or organize that information. So I've decided I'm going to have a link off my home page, and I indicate that by bringing a line down, and I draw this little branch thing here, and this indicates that off of this home page, okay, which is my index.html, and by the way, just for purposes of, getting this sort of in your head right up front and right off the bat, the file that you create as your home page will always be called index.html forevermore, no matter how big your site is, whether it's 600 pages or whether it's 5 pages. The home page HTML file will always be named index. So I kind of put that in here because this is sort of the root level where we start, and the home page is the page we kind of start off of. So I put that index.html name right here at the root level, at the very top. Okay, and if you look down here, It's sitting in my listing at the top here, index.html. Okay, so once I'm on the home page, if I was a viewer and I'm looking at the content on the home page, I will see these 4 links right here: bio, history, gallery, and contacts. Okay, and I indicate that by drawing this little branch thing here. And this is all part of developing a site diagram, is sort of giving your client an idea of how you're going to organize the information. Now, in addition to setting up a site diagram, I also mention over here, I'm going to jump back to the progress report right up here, and I also mentioned that while you're planning your site diagram, it's a great idea to start thinking about how you're going to name your files and start putting together the structure, the file structure for your website. So let's jump back over here. And you can kind of see how I'm starting to do that. I started doing that here with index.html. Notice over here on the bio page, I now am giving the bio page a name, and I'm going to call that bio.html. My history page will be called history.html. My gallery page will be gallery.html, and my contact page will be contact.html. Now, if I scroll down here slightly, you'll see that my index starts out here, then I've got bio, history, gallery, and contact. They're all listed here in order based on how they're listed here. Okay? So already, before I even begin design or anything else, I'm already starting to think in my mind, how do I need to set this structure up on my hard drive so that when I do begin to build web pages, I don't end up having issues like many of you have been dealing with this week, where your images are missing in your tutorials, your CSS is not working, and none of your content looks like it should, and you're having all kinds of issues with web pages not looking like they're supposed to because of the problem involving linking to the proper location of where those HTML pages should be sitting. And that's, in essence, and simply stated, the only problem that everybody's having in terms of those exercise files. Okay? So over here, back to this, after you go to any one of these individual pages, like for instance, when I go to the bio page, there'll be a link on the bio page to the accomplishments of that individual. I'll click that link and that will take me to accomplishments, and I'm going to name that accomplishments page accomp.html, right? Over here under history, I have a little bit more going on. So when I get to the history page, I may have 3 links off that page. Maybe they're button links, they could be image links, they could be, handled in many different ways. But I will click on those, and one will take me to the past history of the individual. The other one will take me to present history, and then I may have another link that takes me to a diagram of the entire chronological history of that individual. And I'm just saying this is the way I'm planning on doing it. I'm not saying that this is how you have to do it. This is basically an example of one way to break down the information. The gallery page, I'm just going to have a gallery page. I'm not going to have any links off of that, other than maybe if you click on an image, it gets bigger. We've all seen that. On the contacts page, I may have a link down at the bottom called citations, and when I go to that citations page, I will have all of the citations for all the imagery and the text content that I included in my website. And I'm going to name that citations.html. So basically, by developing this type of site diagram, we not only are mapping out how we're organizing the information and in what section the information will go in, we're also sort of brainstorming and thinking about how we are going to name the files related to each one of these areas of our website. So listed down here is basically how it would look on your hard drive. You would have a root folder with your famous person's name. Inside there would be an images folder, which right now is empty because you haven't done any of the Photoshop work, but it will be filled with JPEGs, GIFs, and PNGs. And then below that will be all of the HTML pages, as you can kind of see here, that relate to the site. Okay. One other thing I haven't covered here that you see down here is the stylesheet.css. Another problem people were having with the lynda.com tutorials is they were not linking back to the proper style sheet file. So before you get started on creating the full-blown website, you're going to create a style sheet that applies to all of the pages. And the reason for a style sheet set up this way is because let's imagine for a minute that you were working on a website that had 600 pages. You wouldn't want to go into each one of those 600 pages and change like the headers from bold to extra bold. That would take forever. Instead, you would set up a style sheet that controls the styling of all the pages in your website. So if your art director or client said, I'd like all those headers to be extra bold, you can simply just go into that one style sheet, change it to extra bold, and it would revise all the HTML pages linked to it. So you want to have that style sheet also listed here at the root level of the site. Okay, so it's as simple as that. It's one folder called root level, and then all your HTML and CSS pages listed below that. So it's as simple as that. But if you can kind of sit down and start mapping that structure out at this time, it would help you later on when we get to Dreamweaver. Okay, so that's how that kind of works. There's also a great example. I gave you some links over here, examples of site diagrams. There's a great example of, was it here? Here also of someone who is creating a site diagram along with mapping out the names of each one of the sections. So it's kind of similar to what I did here in this diagram. So it's just another example. Okay, so hopefully that's understood. Also, I wanted to point out that I have added another paragraph here about some tutorials that you're not required to submit anything for, but I recommend you watch to also help you understand basic site structure and managing files and folders, which has been a big question for the last week or so. So in Lynda, you want to go into your My Course tab down to Classes and go into the class you're working on, and you could check out those tutorials under Dreamweaver, CS Essential Training. And if you scroll down, you'll see in section 2 here, it covers things like understanding basic site structure, managing files and folders. And again, all of the tutorials in here, I may not assign to you because there's probably 600 different tutorials in all of the modules I have assigned to this class. And I hope that when you guys get stuck on something and you're not sure what to do, that you can come in here and look at some of these tutorials before throwing your hands in the air and saying, I give up. Because you do have the answers to a lot of the questions you guys have been asking me about right here in a lot of these lynda.com tutorials. So I suggest you take it upon yourself to peruse the list in here and watch some of these tutorials that are not assigned to you. This is all reference information for you to use to help you move forward on some of these tutorial assignments as well as the project that we're now getting into, the term project. So please get in there and check that out. All right, so back to here. So that's the progress report for this week. Let me make sure in my notes. And the other thing is, as I mentioned, the very last segment of the lynda.com tutorials on creating your first website. And it's going to cover how to add a gallery and then how to deal with, I believe, importing video and some other assets that you may be interested in adding to your site. I believe they talk about Facebook and Twitter links there. So these tutorials are pretty important for you to sort of review, make sure you grasp that information. And these tutorials will still be here for you. Once you get involved in developing your own website, you can refer back to those tutorials and watch them as many times as you'd like if you have questions or you're stuck on something. So that's, in a nutshell, what's going on for week 6. And hopefully everybody is able to get caught up on some of the previous tutorials that they may be behind on, and getting your files set up properly. Look at these 2 handouts, watch those tutorials on Dreamweaver site structure, and hopefully you'll be able to get a better grasp on how to set up your files, folders, and to create a simple site diagram. Okay, until next time, see you later.